You step into the lobby and the air tastes wrong. It's not just stale, it's chemical. Sweet, but rotting. Like lime poured over something that should have been buried weeks ago. The kind of smell that clings to the back of your throat and refuses to leave. The floors creak beneath your feet, but not in the way old buildings do. This is different. This is intentional. You glance around, too many doors. Hallways that curve where they shouldn't. Staircases that climb into walls. The architecture doesn't just confuse you. It watches you. You're a guest. You signed your name at the desk. You smiled at the concierge. You didn't ask why the windows in your room don't open. You didn't notice the door locks only from the outside, because this is Chicago, 1893. The World's Fair is blocks away. The city glows with progress, with light, with the promise of the future. And here you are, inside a building that feels like it's digesting you. Something is deeply, grotesquely wrong. And the man who built this place, he knew exactly what he was doing. His name was Herman Webster Mudgett, but names were costumes he learned to wear early. As a child, he didn't play with other children. He played with things that used to be alive. Small animals, cats, rabbits, birds, laid out on wooden planks in the barn. He would open them carefully, methodically, the way a jeweler might examine a watch, not with cruelty, with curiosity, cold, clinical curiosity. His mother saw it once, the stillness in his eyes as he peeled back fur and muscle. She said nothing. What do you say to a son who looks at death the way other boys look at toys? By the time he reached medical school, dissection felt natural. The cadavers didn't bother him. They were puzzles. Bodies were just architecture, bone, tissue, void. He learned anatomy not to heal, but to understand the mechanics of collapse. He learned something else, too. People believe what you tell them. Confidence is currency. A smile, a title, a borrowed name, and suddenly you're trusted. Welcomed, handed keys. And when a man like this, empty where empathy should live, is given freedom, anonymity, and an entire city distracted by light, what does he build? Chicago, 1886. The city is a machine and it's hungry. Smokestacks rise like funeral pyres, choking the sky black. The streets pulse with bodies, workers, immigrants, women fleeing small towns for factory wages and the promise of something more. They arrive by train, by boat, by desperation. And in a city this loud, this crowded, this indifferent, you can vanish mid-sentence and no one will notice. There are no centralized records, no missing persons bureau, no system to track who came, who left, who simply stopped existing. The chaos is structural. The anonymity is a feature, not a flaw. Holmes sees it immediately. This isn't just a city. It's an accomplice. He steps off the train with a new name, a forged degree, and the kind of smile that makes people hand over keys. Within months, he's purchased a pharmacy on the corner of 63rd and Wallace. The owner, an old woman, sick alone, sells it to him for almost nothing. And across the street, an empty lot. He stands there one evening, staring at the dirt, the space, the possibility. He doesn't see land, he sees a mouth. Construction begins in 1887. Holmes hires contractors, carpenters, masons, plumbers, but never the same crew twice. He fires them mid-project, pays them in cash. Tells each one a different story about what he's building. A hotel, a warehouse, a private residence. No one sees the blueprint but him. Because there is no blueprint, not on paper, only in his mind, where the design has been perfecting itself for years. The building rises, floor by floor, room by room. But it doesn't make sense. Doors open to brick walls. Staircases climb into ceilings. Hallways double back on themselves like intestines. There are rooms within rooms, hidden panels, false walls, spaces that exist only if you know where to press. Some doors lock from the outside only. Others have no handles at all. Gas pipes run through the walls, controlled by valves in his bedroom. Soundproofing lines certain chambers, thick industrial fabric that swallows screams whole. There are chutes, too. Greased metal slides that drop from upper floors into the basement, where the furnace burns hot enough to erase bone. The foundation is poured over silence. The load-bearing walls bear the weight of secrets. This is not a building. It is a predator dressed in brick and mortar. And now, the only question left is, who fills it? The World's Columbian Exposition opens, and Chicago becomes a stage of light. 27 million people will pass through its gates. The White City, gleaming, electric, impossible, rises along the lakeshore like a vision of the future. And with it come the dreamers. Young women, mostly, fleeing farms, fleeing fathers, fleeing lives too small to hold them. They come for work. As stenographers, seamstresses, waitresses, they come for freedom. For the chance to be something more than someone's daughter, someone's wife. Holmes places an advertisement. Rooms for rent. Safe, affordable, respectable. Emmeline C. Grande arrives in June, 24 years old, beautiful. A stenographer with neat handwriting and a kind smile. She writes letters home every week. She tells her parents about the fair, about the job she's found, about the kind pharmacist who offered her a room. Anna Williams comes looking for her sister Minnie, who stopped writing months ago. They trust him. Why wouldn't they? He's charming, professional. He offers tea. He listens when they talk. And then, one day, Emmeline doesn't come down for breakfast. Anna never checks out. No one reports them missing. Not right away. Because in a city of millions where people come and go like breath, where did she go? Who even asks? He was charming. That's the part that people forget. Evil doesn't arrive wearing a mask. It arrives wearing a smile. A tailored suit, the manners of a gentleman, and the vocabulary of a doctor. Holmes spoke softly. He listened. He looked you in the eyes when you talked, as if your words were the most important thing in the world. Women found him handsome. Men found him trustworthy. He offered jobs to those who needed work. He offered comfort to those traveling alone. And slowly, carefully, he would begin to separate you from the world. A dinner invitation. Just the two of us, he'd say, a private conversation in his office. I have a proposal, something better than what you're doing now. He'd offer more money, better hours, a room upstairs so you wouldn't have to travel. Isn't that easier? Isn't that safer? And piece by piece, your support system would dissolve. You'd stop writing letters. You'd stop visiting friends. You were busy. He needed you. You were special. Until one night, you're alone in his world. Completely. The door locks behind you from the outside. You hear the hiss before you understand it. Gas seeping through the vents. And the last thing you realize as your lungs begin to burn is that kindness was never kindness. It was bait. The rooms where silence lived were small, soundproof, airtight, built with the precision of a man who understood exactly how long it takes for a body to stop fighting. Some had gas jets, copper pipes running through the walls, controlled by valves in his bedroom. He could flood a room with carbon monoxide while he ate dinner, while he read the paper, while he listened. Others had trapdoors, greased hinges, a drop into darkness into the basement where the real work began. There was a stretching rack, medieval, functional, iron and wood, stained with use, a surgical table, straps at the wrists, the ankles, the throat. And in the corner, the crematorium. Industrial. Hot enough to reduce bone to ash, flesh to vapor, identity to nothing. The walls swallowed screams. The air tasted of iron and fear, and something chemical that clung to your skin long after you stopped breathing. But here's the thing people don't talk about. Holmes didn't just kill. He documented. He dissected. He stripped flesh from bone with the care of a craftsman and sold the skeletons to medical schools. Clean, articulated, perfect specimens. He made money from their bodies after he erased their names. And in the silence of that basement, surrounded by what was left, he felt nothing. Just the satisfaction of a job completed. Beneath the hotel, in the basement where daylight never reached, was a laboratory. Not the kind that saves lives, the kind that dismantles them. Surgical tools hung on the walls, bone saws, scalpels, clamps. Polished and organized like a professional operating theater, there were vats of acid. Quicklime. Chemicals that could dissolve tissue in hours, leaving only bone behind. Holmes worked down here, alone, methodically. He stripped flesh from bone with the precision of a trained anatomist. He articulated skeletons, wired the joints, cleaned the marrow, bleached them white. Then he sold them. To medical schools, to universities, to doctors who never asked where the specimens came from. He extracted gold fillings with pliers, pocketing them like coins. He kept jars, organs preserved in formaldehyde, hearts, lungs, pieces of people labeled and stored like inventory. This wasn't madness, it was business. Evil isn't always chaotic. Sometimes it's calm, profitable, efficient. And while he worked in the dark, humming softly to himself, 3 floors above, the hotel lobby still hummed with life. Guests checked in. Porters carried luggage. Women in summer dresses asked about rates, about amenities, about how close they were to the fair. No one smelled the lime. No one heard the silence underneath their feet. Above ground, life continues. The fair dazzles. Fireworks burst over the white city every night. Crowds gasp at the Ferris wheel, at the electric lights, at the promise of a future bright enough to erase the past. And the hotel fills. Holmes plays his roles perfectly. Proprietor, doctor, lover, friend. He pours tea. He asks about your family. He laughs at jokes. He offers his coat when it rains. In the dining room, a woman laughs, bright, unguarded, alive. 2 floors below, another woman presses her palms against a locked door, her breath thinning, her lungs screaming for air that isn't there anymore. The duality is seamless. He walks between worlds like a man crossing rooms. One moment, charm, the next, cold precision. He is both, he is neither. And for a while it works. But greed is louder than caution. He begins taking risks, insurance fraud, borrowed names, debts he never intends to repay. He moves faster, sloppier. The bodies pile up, and the architecture can't hide them all. Something is starting to crack. And when a man built on lies begins to slip, the collapse is inevitable. The collapse begins quietly. A contractor he never paid starts talking. To other workers, to neighbors. He mentions the odd rooms, the doors that lock wrong, the chutes that lead to nowhere he was allowed to see. A private investigator is hired by a family whose daughter never came home. He asks questions at the hotel. He notices the smell. He notices how many women checked in but never checked out. Insurance companies start comparing claims. Too many policies, too many deaths, too many coincidences wrapped around one man's name. Holmes feels it, the tightening, the walls closing in. He begins burning records, boxes of letters, ledgers, receipts, fed into the furnace that once consumed bone. He pays off debts with forged checks. He disappears for days, reappearing with new stories, new excuses. And then, in November 1894, he flees. New city, new name, new scheme. But the investigators follow. In Boston, a year later, they arrest him. Not for murder, not yet, for insurance fraud, for the death of his associate, Benjamin Petizzo, whose body was found burned and staged. Holmes smiles in the courtroom, confident and certain he'll talk his way out. He doesn't realize yet. The cage is already closed. The detectives enter the building in July 1895. They're expecting fraud, maybe theft, evidence of insurance schemes, forged documents, financial crimes. They are not prepared for what they find. Room by room, the horror reveals itself. Doors that open to brick, staircases that climb into walls, hallways that loop back on themselves like a labyrinth designed by something inhuman. They find the gas pipes first. Copper lines snaking through the walls, controlled by valves in Holmes's bedroom. One detective turns a handle, hears the hiss in the room next door. They find trapdoors, greased, silent, dropping into darkness. In the basement, the furnace is still warm. Bone fragments scattered in the ash. Teeth. A femur too small to be a man's. Personal belongings stacked in the crates. Jewelry, hairpins, shoes worn thin by women who will never wear them again. One investigator vomits in the corner. Another just stares, unable to process the architecture of it, the intentionality. This wasn't madness, this was design. They catalog what they can, but the records are burned, the bodies are ash, the women are ghosts. Someone asks the question no one wants to answer. How many? 20? 50? 200? The truth is, we'll never know. The building kept his secrets better than he did. In the courtroom, Holmes is calm, eerily calm. He sits with his hands folded, his posture straight, his expression almost bored. When questioned, he speaks clearly, articulately. He deflects with the precision of a lawyer. He denies with the confidence of a man who has never been caught before. And occasionally, he admits, not everything, just enough. A death here, an accident there. His tone is casual, as if discussing a minor business mishap, as if the women were transactions that simply didn't go as planned. The families sit in the gallery, mothers, sisters, fathers who traveled across states just to hear someone say their daughter's name aloud in a room that matters. The evidence is brought forward. Bone fragments, personal effects, testimonies from the few who escaped, who felt the gas beginning to seep, who ran before the door locked. Holmes watches it all like a man watching a play he's already seen. This is theater to him. He is the lead actor. The audience is captivated. The verdict comes in November 1895. Guilty. The sentence, death by hanging. And even now, even as the judge reads the words, Holmes is writing. A confession. 200 pages, full of lies. Holmes confesses to 27 murders. Then, a week later, he retracts 6. Adds 3 more. Changes the details. A woman he said died by gas now died by poison. A man he claimed to bury was actually burned. Even in confession, he cannot tell the truth, because the truth was never the point. Control was. He writes for newspapers. They pay him. He becomes a celebrity in chains. The monster of Chicago, the devil in the White City. People devour his words like gospel, even though every sentence is a performance. Investigators try to verify his claims. They exhume graves, they cross-reference names. Some victims he confessed to killing, still alive, living in other states, reading about their own murders in the paper. Other names, women whose families begged for answers, he never mentions at all. It's maddening, like trying to hold smoke, like asking a liar to define the truth. Was he protecting accomplices, exaggerating for infamy, playing one final game because it's the only power he has left? No one knows. And maybe that's exactly what he wanted, to die without ever giving them the satisfaction of certainty. The execution is set for May 7th, 1896. But the real death, that happened long before. May 7th, 1896. Holmes walks to the gallows, calm, composed. His last words are polite, almost gracious. He thanks the warden. He adjusts his collar. He looks out at the crowd gathered to watch him die and shows them nothing. No fear, no regret, no confession that matters. The noose is placed around his neck. The trapdoor opens. His neck doesn't break. It's supposed to be quick, clean, merciful even. But the drop is wrong. The angle is off. And so he hangs there, strangling. His body twitches, jerks. His legs kick against air. His hands claw at the rope, instinct overriding the performance he tried to maintain. It takes 15 minutes, 15 minutes of gasping, of suffocating, of dying the way so many of his victims died, slow, aware, and alone. The crowd watches in silence. When it's finally over, they cut him down. His body is placed in a coffin. But they don't just bury him. They fill the coffin with cement. 2 tons of it. They bury him 10 feet deep, under layers of concrete and earth. Even in death, there was fear that somehow he'd find a way out. In August 1895, months before Holmes hangs, the castle burns. No one knows how it starts. Some say arson, someone trying to erase evidence, to bury secrets under ash. Others say it was an accident, a spark in the wrong place at the wrong time. But standing there, watching the flames consume the building, it's hard not to think. Maybe the structure itself wanted to die. The fire rips through the upper floors. Wood and plaster collapse inward. The gas pipes burst, feeding the blaze. Smoke pours into the sky, thick and black, carrying with it the smell of lime and rot and something else, something the neighbors will never be able to name. By morning, it's gone. The walls, the rooms, the staircases that led nowhere, the doors that locked from the outside, all of it, reduced to ash and twisted metal. The lot sits empty for years. People avoid it. Children don't play there. The victims' names fade faster than the killers. The evidence is destroyed. The horror, sanitized. Society does what it always does when confronted with something it cannot reconcile. It burns it, and pretends the smoke was never there. Holmes becomes legend. Newspapers inflate the body count. 200 victims, 300. Some papers claim he confessed to killing since childhood, that his entire life was one long, unbroken murder. Dime novels print his face on the cover. The Torture Doctor, The Demon of Chicago. They sell thousands of copies. People devour them on trains, in parlors, over breakfast. He becomes myth. Monster. Something larger and darker than he ever was in life. And the women? Emmeline Sagrande, Anna Williams, Minnie Williams, Julia Connor and her daughter Pearl. They become footnotes. Nameless bodies in the basement. Evidence in a trial. Symbols of his evil, but never people in their own right. Because that's what we do, isn't it? We remember the killer. We forget the killed. We make documentaries about the monster. We write books analyzing his psychology. We turn his violence into entertainment, into fascination, into something almost beautiful in its horror. And their names, their dreams, the letters they wrote home, the lives they were trying to build, forgotten, erased by the same culture that couldn't protect them in the first place. Holmes wanted to be remembered. and we gave him exactly what he wanted. While they remain ghosts, unnamed, unmarked, unremembered. Holmes wasn't the last. He was the blueprint, the charming killer, the man who hides in plain sight, the architect of nightmares built with a smile and a handshake. We've seen him again and again, different names, different cities, but the same cold center. Bundy, Dahmer, Gacy, men who understood that evil doesn't need to announce itself. It just needs to be patient. Holmes gave us the archetype, and we've been feeding it ever since. We made an industry out of bodies. True crime podcasts, documentaries, walking tours of murder sites. We consume violence like entertainment, divorce it from the people it destroyed, and call it fascination. We remember the killer's name, his methods, his psychology. But can you name his victims without looking them up? Can you picture Emmeline's face? Do you know what Anna wanted to be? Holmes has been dead for over a century, and yet his story is told more often, more vividly, with more detail and care than theirs ever will be. So we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean that we remember him more than them? What does it say about us, that we built monuments to his evil, while their graves remain unmarked? We inherited his violence, but we also inherited the choice of what to do with it. Emmeline Cigrand, 24 years old, a stenographer. She wrote letters home every Sunday. She told her parents about the city, about the fair, about the future she was building. She loved flowers. She wanted to save enough money to open a small shop someday. Minnie Williams, a schoolteacher from Texas, smart, independent. She came to Chicago looking for her sister Anna. She believed people when they said they'd help her. She believed in second chances. Anna Williams. She followed Minnie. She asked questions no one else thought to ask. She refused to stop looking, even when the trail went cold. She was brave. She died for it. Julia Connor and her daughter Pearl. Julia was a widow, trying to survive. Pearl was 8 years old. She liked dolls. She trusted the kind man who let them stay in his building. She called him Uncle, Nanny Williams, Rosine Van Jassand, Emily Van Tassel. Women with dreams, with families, with futures that were stolen before they could live them. They are not footnotes, they are not evidence, they were people, and the last thing they ever gave was their trust.